Hello Internet, Taliesin here, and welcome to another episode of the Weekly Reset in 9.2. Everyone is having a brilliant time. There is no one who is not having a good time. And you know me, Internet, I'm usually very pessimistic, but I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say that this right here marks a sea change in the way that World of Warcraft is delivered. No more content droughts. No more big waits for announcements. 10.0 is just around the corner, and you can quote me on that. It is a good time to be a World of Warcraft player.
Hello Internet, Taliesin here. Welcome to another episode of the Weekly Reset, where once again I am predicting the announcement of the new expansion 10.0. I know I've said this before, but this time I've really got a feeling. Is there anybody there?
Knowledge is power.
Hello Internet, Taliesin here, and welcome to another episode of the Weekly Reset, Taliesin and Evitel's Wondrous Wisdom Show. The real episode now, no more jokes. In a week where it is the week of 2.2.2.2.2.2.2.2.2.2 and 9.2, but also the week our new child was born early, presumably so she didn't have to fall behind on enlightened reputation progress, and honestly, I can respect that. That meets with a sage nod of fatherly approval. But I'm sure you'll understand if this episode of the show isn't quite as high in production values as it sometimes is. And you know, I don't want to do a step-by-step guide for the new patch or any shit like that. No, Wowhead have got all of that covered, all handy and in one place, like the comprehensive guide we are linking in the description. I'm not even going to cover the annual Love Rocket shit show. No, instead, this episode is going to be dedicated to exploring a simple premise about Eternity's End, the Hopium of 9.2 versus the reality. Because it's only natural that hopes and hype for a new World of Warcraft patch are going to be high, both in terms of the content that is being provided and in what that might mean for the future direction of the game in general, especially when Shadowlands has been such an unsatisfactory experience for so many of us, for so many different reasons. So I hope you like sucking, Internet, because we are going to take a deep breath from the well of Hopium on a number of different 9.2 topics, before balancing that out with the cold, hard nipples, reality in each case. So allow me, if you will, to chug down on Hopium canister number 1. 9.2 will tie up the story and everyone will love that. It's no secret that the story of WoW in the last couple of expansions has been controversial within the player base, and not just because of the Sylvanas arc. There have been issues with the way that the Shadowlands was presented at all, but also in the ways it was presented. We never got to see any of the other working covenants, you remember. We had all that Alloon stuff, the first ones being a thing, the jailer getting inserted in his invisible hand behind past events, the jailer being very boring and unexplored as an antagonist, but most of the heated discussion has been connected to the Sylvanas arc in some way, and there's a real hope that 9.2, being functionally the conclusion of Shadowlands and therefore of this Sylvanas story, will resolve everything in a satisfying way. And let's be real, that's not going to happen. Firstly, most importantly, because it's basically impossible for that to happen at this stage. Whatever fate befalls Sylvanas, and however it is presented in-game, then it is never going to be able to make everyone, or even probably a slight majority of people, happy. Probably kind of simply because of how we got here, and I guess you can only really blame Blizzard for that. But here's the thing, I'm not entirely sure that 9.2's resolution is really going to make anyone happy. The final chapter of the story campaign, entitled Epilogue Judgment, has not been seen on the PTR at all, which is obviously a really good thing. I don't know why any story ever has to make it onto the PTR, but especially not relatively straightforward quests like the weekly campaign installments. Keep all of that under wraps as far as I'm concerned. Keep it secret. Shush, no more. But for me, the warning signs are in the word epilogue. Like, I know I'm a big story guy, okay, and I know not everyone else is, but I don't think people want Sylvanas' resolution to be an epilogue, you know? This isn't Frodo returning to the Shire. This isn't Harry touching his scar and sensing all is well. This is the fate, the judgment, for goodness sake, of Sylvanas. And for most players, the climax of the dominant character arc for the last 2 expansions isn't incidental to the main event. It is the main event, far more so than the inevitable thwarting of whatever the Jailer's plan is, which looks to be harnessing the power of the Azeroth World Soul to use the making machine of the first ones to unmake reality, just like it's always been kind of obvious from the start. Or whatever, sorry, but that is not as interesting as what happens to Sylvanas. And the fact is that just one story chapter, and that it's a chapter called Epilogue, just makes me think that it's going to be nowhere as involved, detailed, or satisfying as anyone needs it to be. Whatever is in that chapter, you feel it's not going to make sense of her character choices from BFA for people that don't accept those character choices now. It's not going to make those who think she should be punished believe that she was sufficiently punished, and I'm kind of confident it's not going to make those who believe she should be redeemed think that she's been adequately redeemed. I don't think those who want more explanation as to her motives in joining the Jailer or the burning of Teldrassil will get the explanation that they crave, and I don't even think those who are just sick of the whole thing are going to get the story just being over and disappearing the way that they want either. I could be wrong, obviously. I hope I am, and I will keep necking that Hopium until week 6 when the chapter goes live, but honestly, my hopes for this one aren't super high. The rest of the story in 9.2 is good. It's solid without being spectacular. The campaign quests focus mostly on events around Zereth Mortis without tying up too many general Shadowlands loose ends, with one notable exception. There are cute and characterful side quests going on, which I really enjoyed, and like I say, it is all good stuff, just not the kind of thing that's going to win over people who don't enjoy the Shadowlands narrative now. There's nothing here that makes everything make sense, if you know what I mean. Wow, reality sucks. I'm going to take another huff of the good stuff. Zereth Mortis is really fun. And here's the thing, this is genuinely true. Zereth Mortis is really fun. As far as the now established WoW Playground Island Zone goes, this is a very well put together example with everything that you'd expect done really well. Obviously, it looks great and, more importantly, very different from how we are used to things looking in Shadowlands. The usual world quests, rares, treasures, events, and encounters are all present and entertaining. The music is absolutely banging, as in it totally slaps, and again, is totally different to anything that we've been used to over the past year and a half. It's been a year and a half. There are interesting nooks and crannies and distinct and sometimes genuinely beautiful areas, and a nice sense of opening up the zone to yourself as you progress through the Cypher. And certainly at times on the PTR, I felt that there are quests and threads popping up everywhere for me to follow in that fun, overwhelming new patch way, taking me into unexpected underground facilities and caves and cliff tops and just generally some really cool stuff. Other times, it has to be said, I've logged into that PTR and there hasn't really been much to do for some reason. Less quests having popped than I was expecting for the day, and I feel like I've got a pretty good handle on the zone now after, honestly, the bare minimum of engagement. Basically what I'm saying is, I don't know how long this will be fun for. I am hopefulium that it'll be a good couple of months of solid enjoyment for someone like me who will be kind of running it in the background, supplementing my raiding and Mythic Plus. Like, I want that Enlightened rep for my Legendary memory. I want Pathfinder for my flying. I want to chip away at the Cypher because it's there, and also the outdoor world conveniences attached to it. Oh, and also because of a tiny bit of story too. There really should be a whole lot more in my opinion. But I think that where Zereth Mortis really does deserve genuine praise is in its approach to single player content and gearing. Because for those players who don't tend to engage in group activity beyond LFR, and there are lots of you, then Cypher gear is a really big deal. Initially dropping at level 233 from sources all over the zone, and therefore not as powerful as the 246 Sandworn Relic gear, which can be obtained through a vendor, the item level of Cypher gear increases as you unlock new parts of, and this is definitely going to surprise you, the Cypher of the first ones. Over 6 different levels, so players advancing the Cypher have constant gear progression, and once the Cypher is fully unlocked, this gear will be dropping at item level 252, the same as normal raid level. And not only that, but Cypher gear can come with extra bonuses to help in outdoors Shadowlands content, and can have those effects added to them manually via the Cypher. This is genuinely good stuff, as is the Synthesis Forge, which allows the creation of mounts and pets, a process which replaces all the mount and pet drops, which you might have expected from rares and elites in the zone, except one. A new idea which, you know, could go either way, but which I think is going to be fun for a lot of players, due to its deterministic nature, for a patch at least. Again, this is a feature unlocked on the Cypher, and it's a pretty involved system, which involves obtaining schematics for the different mount types and the components to synthesize them. And it's clear that Blizz are hoping that this will be one of the long-term reasons to come back to the zone as time goes on. And why not? Because this is really cool. I do wish there was a strong, solid B-plot going on alongside the campaign story that opened up naturally as part of your zone progression or on the Cypher. I feel this was such a great opportunity to really hammer home the optional nature of the Cypher of the first ones by attaching some genuinely engaging but non-essential story content. And you'd have to say 9.2 seems like an opportunity missed this time. But overall, I have really enjoyed my time in Zereth Mortis on the PTR, and I have been purposely holding back so as not to spoil too much for myself, and I am willing to believe the Hopium on this one. Zereth Mortis is good content, fair play, and it is totally possible that it will indeed stay fun for the couple of months that you can reasonably expect a new patch zone to be fun for. But the reality is, there are very unreasonable expectations and pressure on Zereth Mortis and 9.2, because like I said last episode, this is no normal patch. It doesn't come a few months after 9.1 at a time where we've done with the previous content and are totally ready for new stuff. Instead, it comes at the end of a huge, unprecedented mid-expansion content drought, which has worn the player base down and left everyone a little bit edgy and fatigued to a degree that 9.2, and in particular, I think Zereth Mortis, simply can't be as good as it needs to be. As in, it will never be good enough to make the wait for it worth it. Does that make sense? Shadowlands has had 2 patches less than the last 2 expansions in the same time frame. This time in Legion, we were in Argus and 7.3. This time in BFA, we were getting ready for the very close now Nyalotha and 8.3. We have missed an entire installment, a whole major and 0.5 patch on our way to Zereth Mortis, and it's unfair to judge 9.2 on that rather than on its own terms, but this is the reality section, and the reality is that people will, which is a shame because I think there's tons to enjoy here, and I'm looking forward to doing so. Which reminds me, there's still plenty of Hopium left to go around, fam. Blizz listened to us, yay! One big reason to be hopeful about 9.2, and indeed the long-term health of the game in general, is that there have been major and encouraging signs during 9.15 and this 9.2 PTR that Blizz really have taken a lot of criticism on board and really are fundamentally changing some of their core philosophies on the game in a really good way. Those changes in 9.15, which opened up Covenants and Torghast and made the game a whole lot better as a result, do seem to be something that is happening in 9.2 as well. There is lots of really good and sensible orc catch-up stuff in the patch. The new currency for upgrading Legendaries to their maximum item level is available from plentiful sources, often passively, and with the option to grind out those new floors of Torghast if you need to. Blizzard listened to and acted upon loads of feedback during this PTR in a way that we are frankly not entirely used to, bending on how Legendaries are obtained and how rep is earned, taking flying off of the Cypher, bringing back tier tokens, and more. I think Blizz deserve credit for how they approach 9.2 generally, and it is objectively an improvement on other PTRs in that sense. The reality though, is it enough? Well, not for me. There are still, in my opinion, really obviously bad things in place right now, which everyone knows are bad and have pointed out are bad, and which are still there. Most obviously, the timers on the Cypher of the first ones. No one thinks that waiting 6 days for those main unlocks is fun, Blizz. And yes, fair play, on the release build, most of them have now been shortened to 5 seconds, but most isn't all, and some of them take 6 days. Like, seriously, no, this is very bad. I do not approve. I can even kind of understand where they're coming from, even though, and I stress, I do not agree with them, with it being, you know, research, so there's an RPG element to the timer in a way, and even though they are completely wrong because it sucks, obviously, fine, for the sake of argument, if you must have a timer, which you really mustn't, then at least make it more engaging. How about, instead of you pay your 150 ciphers or whatever, and the timer starts, and that's it, how about Now, on top of that, you add the option to pay 400 ciphers to make the research instant, like most of the other timers on the Cypher. And how about if you can't afford that 400 up front, you can pay the 150 to get it started and add, say, 50 ciphers at a time once the timer is running to speed it up by certain amounts. That way, casuals can pay the smaller amount just to get the timer going, which they may not mind anyway because they'll be logged out until it ticks down, while players who play more can spend more currency, which they'll have because they play more, to make the thing go instantly, which is more valuable to them because they play the game more, while those in between get some active engagement of, hey, the timer's running, before I log off, I might just farm up some ciphers to hand in and make it go a bit quicker. And that's cool. I feel like I've done something rather than watch a clock tick by on my mobile phone, PC. I came up with that idea in 5 seconds, and it's too late for 9.2, and honestly, I admit, it's not a very good idea, but it's better than a passive shitty 6-day timer, which is what we've got now, Blizz. Another thing that the player base was in favor of that doesn't seem to have found its way into the game is the craftable tier gear from open world content. One genuinely neat feature of Eternity's End is the ability to convert Season 3 gear from Raid, including LFR, Mythic Plus, and Ranked PvP into equivalent slot and item level tier pieces via the creation catalyst. This is a very cool idea. It adds an extra element of determinism and bad luck protection into building a tier set. Non-raiders can get a tier set without raiding, which is, especially good for PvPers. But there is no gear that you can get from the open world that can be used in the catalyst, which to me seems like a bit of an oversight, especially as there are two obvious candidates, that 246 Sandworn Relic gear or the Cypher gear that passively increases its drop item level through progressing that system. Why aren't those able to be turned into tier pieces? What harm would it do? What balance would be thrown out of whack if players, who by definition don't engage with group content above LFR, are able to get their tier sets at item levels notably below that content? If we have already established that the sanctity of tier sets is no longer exclusive to raiders, and I think that's a good change, then why not solo open world players? Again, I have to ask, what harm would it do? Likewise, alt play and catch up continues the trend started in 9.1.5 and is still a huge improvement over any of BFA or Legion's systems, but I still really think we could do more. All of the intro skips and account-wide legendary memory unlocks and total conduit unlocks and mailable currencies in the world don't change the fact I still have to unlock every point on the Cypher of the First Ones on every character that I take into that zone if I want the cool Cypher gear, or even to make progress on the build-amount synthesis machine. I've been saying this for years now, but I think we're at a point where most of the player base actually agrees with me, which feels weird. In my opinion, the only thing you should have to do on an alt are level it and gear it. All other progresses like reputation, story quests, zone unlocks, covenant progress, Cypher of the First One's progress, etc. should be account-wide. Because if I take an alt into the new zone a few weeks in, after my main has already unlocked the entire Cypher, meaning that Cypher gear now drops at 256 from the off, that makes me feel awesome, and I'm still going to be playing that alt in the zone plenty. I'm still going to be doing world quests and daily quests and elites and treasures and everything else because I want that sweet, sweet gear to drop. And that feels so much better than having to slog through the Cypher every time, which is absolutely one of those things that is legit fun, but only once, before I get to the really enjoyable bit. Again, it's too late for 9.2, but this is the kind of shit we really need account-widing in the future, Blizz. I would be so excited about taking my alts through 9.2 if this was in place. I'm at the point where I genuinely believe that Blizzard's big talk about their change in philosophy is genuine and heartfelt. I think there is enough evidence now to suggest that, and I think there is reason to be incredibly hopefulium for 10.0 as a result. So I admit I am nitpicking a bit here, but we are so close, Wow, I'm gonna need some medical grade Hopium after that. Torghast is fixed now! Honestly, Torghast was fixed in 9.1.5, simply unlocking the rewards for it so that players could run it as many times as they wanted to grind out the currency they needed automatically made that that tower significantly more fun in my opinion, and that will continue to be the case in 9.2, especially as now Torghast is not the only way to get the new Cosmic Flux currency that you need to upgrade Legos and create tier pieces. That shit is dished out in basically all content like sweets at a kid's party. And then there's the new Gauntlet Boss Rush mode, which I have had a lot of fun with too, and which I'm really looking forward to going into with groups. I kind of think that Torghast is a bit like No Man's Sky. It launched in a form that basically no one wanted it to be. Most players formed their bad opinion of it then, and fair enough, but over the course of the expansion, Blizz have kept adding to it and iterating it, and for those that stuck around, it is genuinely a thing which a lot of people are going to find incredibly fun and rewarding content. It was always a bit of an experiment. I think there are big lessons to be learned, but Torghast ends the expansion in a state where if the next X-Pack had something similar, I would genuinely be quite interested in the idea. And I say that as someone who was never on the hype train for the tower before Shadowlands released. So yeah, okay, that was some really strong Hopium right there. Let's have some more. Patch cadence is back to normal, Hopium. It is true that first the 9.2 PTR and then the patch itself came a little bit earlier than many of us initially predicted. And with the community already buzzing about an ever-nearing 10.0 announcement that we've all just basically decided is going to happen, it's easy to maintain the genuine hopium that this could be a sign after a patch release schedule that has gone from brisk and action-packed in Legion to a little too long for comfort in BFA to absolutely turgid like a moldy dank puddle in Shadowlands. Things might finally be about to get to a more recognizable cadence. We identified the patch schedule as being the #1 danger that Shadowlands faced before it released, and unfortunately, this worry has proven to be prescient. More than anything, the ripcord, conduits, boring-ass nipple boy, the slow release of content which I honestly think has been generally pretty good, has been the death of Shadowlands. So this is important, and I have to say, all evidence suggests it is the biggest hopium of all. I'm sorry. 9.2's arrival was sooner than expected, but we've established a pretty low bar for our expectations there. And best case scenario, we do indeed get a 9.25 patch in the middle of the year, and then a new expansion launch at the end of the year, which could mean the first raid of 10.0 in 2022, but depending on how late in the year the expansion were to launch, also could mean that 2022, like 2021 before it, is a year with one World of Warcraft raid release. One raid in the whole year, 2 years in a row. That's the best case scenario. Worst case scenario is that the new expansion doesn't even get announced for months and doesn't launch until 2023. And although I am certain that Team 2 is doing everything to make sure that doesn't happen, I think we all also know it's probably the more likely scenario here, which would mean that Shadowlands would be the longest modern WoW expansion, but with only 66% of the amount of content patches stretched over that longer time. That is not good enough, and basically Blizz need to sort that shit out. They proved what's possible with Legion, and I will be supping the sweet hopium that we can get back there again until this canister runs dry. Oh, the canisters run dry. I want to make something very clear here, because honestly, I thought this video structure would just be a fun way to do things, and the concerns that I raise are legitimate and real, but I also want to say, again, I think 9.2 is really good. I think it has the potential to see the expansion out on a high, and I'm legit excited to see how everything unfolds in the next few weeks. I'm always going to be excited for a new major WoW patch, and there really is no better time in gaming for me than when a new zone or raid or expansion hits. So you better believe we'll be playing lots of it on stream in the very near future. I'm sorry that the reset is still in cobbled together post-baby mode. Evie is obviously still recovering, and my mum is staying in the room that we usually film this in to help out. So it is going to be like this for a bit, but thank you for joining us anyway. If you like this episode, don't thank us, thank our patrons who give their actual real-life money to make all of our work happen, and especially at the moment, thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. Remember, my name is Marcellian Online. No, my name is Taliesin from me, and Evitel, and Anirin, and Penny too. Cheerio.